Okay guys, this week, House of X number 5 comes out. That's another big, important issue. It's highlighted in red, so we know there's gonna be a major revelation that goes down. This could be an issue where all of our questions get answered. All of our theories could finally come to light. So before we read that issue, let's once again recap everything that we know for sure. First thing that we know, Moira McTaggart, she has the mutant ability to go back and relive her entire life every single time that she dies. Meaning she has already gone back and relived about 10 times, changing the timeline each time. But now we're on the House of X timeline, and in this timeline, nothing that happened in the last 10 years in the X-Men comics actually happened. It's part of the lost decade. Yes, it didn't happen at all. We know that for a fact, meaning that House of M didn't happen. That's the only explanation for how there are so many mutants back. Yes, it all makes sense, people. None of that stuff that we saw on that timeline matched up with what we know from the past 10 years. It's the only explanation. Also, the X-Men are now evil. Or maybe the bad mutants are now good. Or maybe, no, that's it. They're all right in that center, sweet, chaotic, neutral realm. That's exactly where the X-Men would be. Like an X-Factor of sorts. Oh my god, we just cracked this case wide freaking open. Unless they're not really the X-Men at all. No, we haven't even seen Professor X's face. And that helmet, it looks like the Maker's helmet. Yes, that's not Professor X at all. It's the only explanation for why he is acting so out of character. He's been the Maker this entire time. Everything is lining up. So, Marvel, what have you got for me?
It's false. No way. Not this time. It's totally made up. Pure fiction. It's fiction. It's a made-up tale. It's a total fabrication. It's a fake. It's fiction. It's an urban legend that never happened. No way. We got you. Not a chance. Not this time. It never happened.
I guess I should probably start cleaning all these up. I forgot that was taped to that guy. Hey everyone, it's me, Aaron, and it's time once again to talk about some X-Men. Ooh, it's been a while, hasn't it? It's been like a month. Unless you count Patreon videos, then it's been less than a month. But yeah, it's been a minute since we talked about the X-Men. But that doesn't mean that these issues stopped being interesting. It doesn't mean that big things stopped happening in the X-Men books. It's just I had to realize I can't come in here and just talk about every single issue of House of X and Power of X, even though I totally could. I have to talk about some other books every now and again. But I'm now talking about some other books. So time to go back to House of X, and what better time than when one of those red issues pops up on their timeline. Yeah, I love that Marvel came in here and flat out went, these are going to be the big ones. These are the ones that you guys need to look forward to, which is great, because I'll be honest with you, I've been enjoying House of X and Power of X this entire time, but the steam started to die down a little bit in the last 2 issues. Not that they weren't good, but I didn't really have that, oh my goodness, I need to form theories about all this and I need to think about everything that this could mean. I didn't have that energy anymore. I now was like, all right, let me just sit back and enjoy this really good book. But because they came in here and they're like, yeah, but that issue is right around the corner, I was never too comfortable. I never sat there and was just like, yeah, okay, it's all been resolved. Good job, everybody. Great job, Jonathan Hickman. You wrote a good X-Men book. Now we can all just go home and wait, what's this? Oh, there's another thing coming up? So yeah, I think that was actually really smart on their part to just go, this is the important one. And yeah, we still have some questions. We still do not know everything that's going on with the House of X. We still don't know everything that's happening in the future. Everything that's happening with the X-Men right now. But we now know a huge chunk of that picture. I guarantee you there is still at least one chunk just sitting there that we do not know. One chunk just right over there that we're like, alright, so what's the last big secret you have? What is the last big reveal that is on the way? Because you know there is one more coming. But now we actually know the answer to a lot of things. And I joked in that opening about how many things I got wrong. I got like 2 things right, and I'm actually shocked at that. It's weird that in this issue, this is like the first issue in which I've read it, and I went, oh my god, I was actually right about some stuff. And it's still so weird, I can't believe it. But okay, before we get into talking about the stuff that happened today and the stuff that I actually got confirmed to be right on, so yay, good for me. Before we get into that stuff, we do need to address the stuff that I was way off on. And in all fairness, I think I have some reason for being way off on it, but the first one is that I came in here and I said, I don't know for sure, but if I had to put money down on it, and in a weird way considering that I'm buying comics on a weekly basis, that kind of is like putting money on it. But if I had to put money on it, I would say that what they are setting up here in House of X, with Moira going back in time and reliving her life, and the fact that there is one timeline in there where we don't know what happened on, it's the big mystery timeline. I feel almost like that timeline is the Marvel Universe that we had been following. And this current timeline was changed during Grant Morrison's run. Because the last thing on that timeline is Genosha being destroyed. Actually, there is one other thing on that timeline, which was it had Moira McTaggart's death, or at least her faking her death. I kept looking at that timeline and going, okay, yeah, everything on that timeline is matching up with what we've seen so far, with what we know exists within the Marvel Universe. But it got to that moment where it had Genosha's destroyed, Moira fakes her own death. I kept looking at that going, okay, I can't be 100% sure on this. And I didn't talk about this in the video because I wasn't 100% sure on this. I was second guessing myself even as I thought about it, but I was like, didn't Moira die before Genosha? I mean, they happened like right around the same time, but I could have sworn Moira died like right, like, you know, a few months before Genosha was destroyed. And here they're flipped. So could that be like the first sign that this isn't what we had seen? Could this be the first sign that, yeah, this is not the timeline that we knew. This is completely different. And then, of course, after I made that video and put it up, Jonathan Hickman went on Twitter and said, hey, that was an error on our part. That was a typo. We accidentally swapped those two dates when we were filling out that map. So one of my big suspicions, I'm actually glad that I didn't come in here and talk about in the video because it was immediately proven wrong. But that was one of the things I was thinking when I was looking at that map. Like, that was the first thing that made me go, I don't know about this. But the other two big things that made me think, oh, this is not our timeline, is that there was a timeline in which Moira lived out a life similar to what we had seen in the comics. And then, like, the last 10 years, it was the things we had seen in the comics. And it referred to that as the Lost Decade. And I knew that wasn't our timeline because everything else on that timeline wasn't matching up with it, except up until that point. And it called it the Lost Decade. And I was like, why would you call that the Lost Decade? That, I mean, Jonathan Hickman has been pretty clear that he has not cared for what Marvel has done with the X-Men over the last 10 years. So I thought, okay, maybe that's him throwing shade. Or maybe they're trying to say all the things that happened during that time period no longer happen in this House of X timeline. And one of the reasons I thought that was because we always had that sixth timeline there, the one that didn't say anything. Of course, I didn't double check this right before doing this, so it might have been the fifth timeline, but it's the mystery timeline, the one which we don't know what it was. So I was like, okay, maybe that was our timeline, the one that we all knew. And, you know, the stuff that happened with the mutants that happened during that timeline. But now we've gone back, and now they just stopped everything after Genosha was destroyed. And that was the other reason why I kept looking at that and just going, okay, yeah, maybe this is not our timeline, because they keep referring to Genosha as being the biggest catastrophe to ever happen to mutants. Nothing this bad has ever happened to mutants. And I kept thinking, what about the Scarlet Witch depowering 99.9% of mutants on the planet? Isn't that also kind of like way up there? I mean, you literally had a storyline after that happened called Decimation and another one called Endangered Species, and for like an entire decade you guys talked about how the X-Men are almost extinct now. Isn't that also kind of like a really big one? Why are you not mentioning that? And then of course, like last week they finally mentioned that. So I looked at that and went, yeah, okay, so this is totally our timeline. You finally mention it, which lets me know, alright, it's not that that stuff didn't happen. You just didn't want to mention it because you just didn't really like the stuff that happened there. But I will also say, he did come in here and make a good argument for why they had not mentioned it yet. They kept talking about Genosha being destroyed and how that was the biggest tragedy to ever happen to mutants. And I kept thinking, well, the depowering by the Scarlet Witch, that had to have been bigger. He actually put the numbers up there. He said 16 million mutants died on Genosha. 1 million mutants were left. So if she depowered 99.9% of 1 million mutants, that's still not as many mutants destroyed as were destroyed on Genosha. So I was like, oh, okay. So yeah, I was way off on that one. Way off. But in my defense, I'm not the only one who thought that. So I do think they might have been trying to like tease us with that. I think they might have wanted us to form those speculations. Or I could be trying to cover my ass here by coming in and going, no guys, it's what we were supposed to think. I was doing what they told me to do. But let's go ahead and actually get into the stuff that was revealed in this issue. By talking about the stuff that was revealed in the last issue. In the last issue of Power of X, it had a flashback to Professor X and Magneto going to talk to Mister Sinister on his island, made up of nothing but Mister Sinisters. And let me just go ahead and say, nobody writes a crazy, cocky, mad scientist quite like Jonathan Hickman. I kind of hope that every writer from here on out just looks at this like 2 pages that Jonathan Hickman wrote for Mister Sinister and go, oh, okay, so that's how we're going to write him from now on. We're all just agreed that's how Mister Sinister is going to be from now on. Because Mister Sinister, he was evil, he was sinister, but he never really had much personality. Mister Sinister's personality had always just been, I'm evil, I'm the one with the razor sharp teeth that you remember from when you were a kid watching the 90s cartoon. Yeah, that was kind of always just Mister Sinister. He was always the guy that says, yes, I'm going to make something here in my lab, and it's going to be some mutant creature. Yeah, I mean, he had a goal. He had a mission. He had things that he did, but doing things and a personality, not the same thing. Jonathan Hickman gave him a great personality in here. And I'm not saying that other writers haven't given him a good personality. Karen Gillian actually gave him a really good personality too that played into his Victorian era personality. The fact that he's insanely old. I enjoyed that. This outdid everything I had seen from Mister Sinister in like 2 pages. He's just nuts. He's just nuts and he's playful and he just has a blast being nuts and playful with his evilness. I love that. I absolutely adore this version of Mister Sinister. That's a word I never thought I would use to describe Mister Sinister, but it just did. Not gonna edit it out. So, yeah, they go to him and they go, so you have like DNA samples of every mutant? Oh, yes, indeed. Yes, absolutely. Just like all of them, right? Oh, yeah. Oh, boy, I'm collecting something right now that you don't even know about. Okay, cool. We want to do something with that, but we're gonna erase your memory so you don't remember agreeing to this until I come to you and need you to agree to it. Sure thing, boss. That's exactly what just happened there in that scene. And I love it because it speaks to Mister Sinister just being like, you want me to do some mad science stuff? With mutant genes? Is it Christmas? Is this my birthday? I don't know, because there's 365 of me, so it could very well be my birthday. Yeah, that's exactly what happens in that scene. And I looked at that and went, okay, they want his DNA. What did I say about that opening scene from the very first House of X? I said, that looks like some pod people stuff. The very first House of X opens up with a naked Cyclops and Jean Grey coming out of an oozy egg thing and just crawling out of there, and Professor X is like, to me, my X-Men. And I just looked at that and went, okay, either he's making clones or he's like putting them in some kind of a weird brainwashing vat that regenerates their bodies and makes them just agree to whatever he wants them to do. It's one of those two. And as soon as that happened with Mister Sinister, I was like, oh, it's clones. It's 100% clones. Yeah, he's making some pod people here. By the way, small thing we have to cover about Mister Sinister. I love still, even at this point, after so many issues, I love the little notes that they come in here with. I love all the documents that they put into these pages to make you feel like you were just reading through a history lesson on the behind the scenes of the things that are happening here. It's so weird to me that, not to like unnecessarily throw shade at another book, but there's another huge book going on right now that does the exact same thing. And I found that interesting in the first couple issues, and now I find it really tedious. And I'm just kind of skimming over that like, yeah, sure, alright, yeah, okay, cool, yep, that's, alright, great. Here, every single one of those things that pops up, I just look at it and go, well, I'm about to learn a whole bunch of interesting information. And for Mister Sinister, they basically said, yeah, Mister Sinister's got his own like newsletter that he passes around Sinister Island among all the other Sinisters, like a gossip rag that he just tosses around. And one of the bits of information on that Mister Sinister document that they showed was that Mister Sinister, he needed to give himself a mutant gene. He got the mutant gene from Thunderbird. Yeah, you remember the X-Men who died on like their very second mission with the team? Remember that guy? Like one of the only X-Men who have never been revived on a team that is known for reviving all their members? We're gonna get to that in a second. Yeah, you ever wonder why he hasn't been revived? Mister Sinister just snatched up his dead body and just went, hey, free X gene, everybody. That's a very interesting piece of backstory that we now have for Mister Sinister. So okay, in the last issue of House of X, we saw the entire team go up to this space station where they were about to activate this master mold. This thing that was going to be the thing that ended up creating Nimrod. The thing that was going to destroy the mutant race in the future. They had to go up there on this suicide mission to take him out. And they took it out, but it did indeed turn into a suicide mission. And as they just started taking these members off left and right, I looked at that and I said to myself, this is really sad. And sad because Jonathan Hickman can write this scene very well. Like, he's making me feel emotions in this scene. You know, like a writer does. But I never thought it was real. In the back of my head, that entire time, I was like, oh, this is gonna get undone, like, instantly. And it's gonna get undone one of two ways. First, this is a story that was kicked off by time travel. Moira McTaggart, every time that she dies, she goes back in time, redoes this. It might get revealed in the next issue, hey, that didn't actually work. The Nimrod is still coming. You all died for nothing. And then Moira will basically have to go back and relive all this over again. And then we're gonna get right back up to that exact mission. And she will tell them, hey, at this moment, zig instead of zag. And then that will just change everything and they'll win the day in the end. So this could all have been just basically a big fake right here. Or it's finally time to go back around and reveal what the heck was up with those eggs. What's up with the pod people? What's up with Mister Sinister and his DNA? And that is what happened here. They revealed what that was all about in House of X #1. And I was right, it is indeed a type of pod people. But I could never have guessed how they are created. Gold Ball. Gold Ball. Yeah, remember that character that Brian Michael Bendis created? Whose major defining character trait was, he said, Gold Ball. The guy who just shot out gold balls. And was like, yeah, I'm Gold Ball. He did a lot with that character, I will give it to him. He gave him some very good issues in there. I actually really enjoyed that character. I thought he was a lot of fun. Moved him over to Miles Morales, did some interesting stuff with him over there. But I've been saying this entire time, it's very clear how Jonathan Hickman just really did not care for what Marvel has done with the X-Men over the past 10 years. And the fact that Brian Michael Bendis did so much with the X-Men and he hasn't mentioned any of it in this entire series so far, I kept going, yeah, I'm almost wondering if Hickman kind of like has just a distaste for what Bendis specifically has done to the team. He comes in here with Gold Ball, one of Bendis' favorite characters on the team, and goes, yeah, guess what? I'm gonna make him God. So I'm doing that with your character. So maybe that's him saying, yeah, guess what? I actually did really enjoy this. I want to continue on with your characters. I want to do some great stuff with him. Or it's him going, I'm going to completely change your character around because I think he's lame and I want to make him cool. I don't know which of those two it is. But I've always said one of the most fascinating things about comics to me is being able to delve into the writer's head and just go, all right, what are you really thinking when you do this? Jonathan Hickman has not given me any shortage of doing that on this entire series so far. But it's not just Gold Ball. It's revealed the secret to these pod people X-Men all comes down to a team that they call the Five. And it's Gold Ball, who his balls that he creates, they've been organic, but they've never really known why they're organic or exactly how they're organic or what their purpose is. And they finally examined them and figured out, oh, they're eggs. What you've been creating this entire time, they're eggs. But they're eggs that aren't capable of carrying life within them. So then you get Proteus over in there. And Proteus has the ability to alter reality. So he changes the egg so now they can carry life in there. But they still need that spark of life. So they take the DNA that Mister Sinister had been collecting, inject it into the eggs, and then Elixir starts channeling his life energy into there. Elixir, the guy who can heal almost anything, he has the ability to basically fix organic life. So they put the DNA into these eggs that can now carry life. Elixir, he gets that spark going. He gets that going along. But now it needs time. These X-Men, they would take time to grow in there. Luckily, you've got Ava Bell, another character that Ben has created, and a character that Ben has created, and did some interesting stuff with them, and then just completely had them shuffle off. Stage left even. Just got out of there. You just took a very interesting character you created, and was like, yeah, but I'm gonna give her one issue that's really fascinating, and then just never use her again. That's not, oh, what? That's not what you do with a really interesting character, but alright, you're the writer, do what you want to do, do what you want to do. It's your creation, do what you want to do with that creation. I'm kind of glad that Jonathan Hickman came in here and reminded everyone that Ava Bell exists, and she's actually a cool character and has really unique powers, and I want to see what they end up doing with that. Yeah, Ava Bell came back, the person who has the ability to alter time. She just goes up to these eggs and goes, how long do they need to sit in the oven for? Alright, there, done. And then you get Hope Summers, the mutant avatar, who can channel the power of other mutants in them. She basically infuses these eggs with power, and then also holds hands with the other members of the Five, and basically gets all their powers to work in unison together in order to make these eggs just, bam, come out perfect, and then within a few seconds, you've got yourself a brand new Cyclops. Now, there's a lot that I find fascinating about this. The first thing is that I love the fact that the X-Men, a team that has been known for having more members die on there than any other team out there, has basically just conquered death. They basically just went, yeah, none of that anymore. And there's a part in which you're reading those documents in there and they're describing this process and they're going, here's how many mutants have died over the past couple of years. Everything from Genosha till now, including the ones who were depowered. How are we going to get them all back? Well, we can do this. How long is that going to take? Well, it'll take this long. That's a long period of time. But we're going faster. We're getting quicker with this. We're now starting to speed up the process. So now it might only take 10 years to resurrect every single mutant that has died over the course of the last decade. And if we keep going at this pace, maybe even sooner. We could have every single mutant who has ever died right back here before you even know it. That is crazy to me. They even come in here and they go, yes, we've even thought of using some other mutants who have the ability to copy powers to be a stand-in for another member of the Five. And they list off some of the members and I was like, that member is already dead. Wait, does that mean that you've already resurrected them? Because that was one of my questions. When we were seeing all those preview images for the upcoming X-Men book, I'm seeing some characters in there that we know for a fact are already dead. And you might be saying to yourself, okay, well, if they're already dead, how are they going to, like, get their brain in there? It's revealed that Cerebro, this entire time, it wasn't made to detect mutants. That was the secondary nature of it. The primary reason for Cerebro's existence was to copy the minds of mutants. And he said that once a week, Professor X just puts on that Cerebro, scans every single mutant across the entire planet, and basically just makes a save as file for them. Just comes in here and just goes, yep, okay, we're just gonna make that backup copy, just drag that over here and click, and we're done. Great, perfect. So anytime that a mutant dies, they've now got their perfect genetic duplicate right there. All they need is the brain. Professor X, for, you know, the entire time that he's been Professor X, the entire time he's had Cerebro, every time we've seen him putting that helmet on, he's been making copies of all these characters. So now they can just bring them back whenever they want. Second reason I find this very fascinating is because, yes, they take the mind of these mutants and put them in there, and Magneto refers to that as their essence, the thing that makes them who they are. However, what one person believes makes someone who they are might not be what another person believes makes them who they are, and I keep looking at Nightcrawler over there, the holy man of the X-Men, and I'm just waiting for that day where he's gonna come in here and be like, I have some questions about this. I know you're putting my mind in there, and Magneto calls that the essence of what a mutant is. I've kind of been raised to believe in, like, a soul and stuff. Is that going in there too, or did my soul disappear? Also, by the way, I can't get back into heaven. Are we ever going to address that issue? Is that ever going to come back up again? Why have we not talked about that yet? That's actually just been a pet peeve of mine, that is a big thing with Nightcrawler, and they have yet to address that. Anywho, that's not in this issue. But yeah, I'm looking forward to that discussion because it seems like someone's gonna have to have it. Maybe not Nightcrawler, but I picture somebody at some point is going to get resurrected and they're going to come back and just go, I kind of wish I had stayed dead. I don't know what I am right now. Sometimes dead is better. I read Pet Sematary. Someone is going to have that conversation. So I'm very interested in seeing who it's going to be and when it comes up. Speaking of other things I look forward to potentially coming up in here, Jonathan Hickman never starts something that he doesn't have like a 5-year-long plan for, 3, 4, 5-year-long plan for. I know this is lean somewhere. I know he didn't just come in here and create the answer to how these characters can come back to life over and over and over again, just so it can now be a thing. No. That's going to be a thing. And considering he's getting these DNA samples from Mister Sinister, when have we ever known Mister Sinister to be completely trustworthy? I mean, yes, we've got Professor X over there, and he can scan every single atom within Mister Sinister's mind to make sure that he's telling the truth on all this. If anybody out there could figure out a way to trick Professor X and Cerebro so that he can still have his own plans in the background that nobody really knows about, wouldn't it be Mister Sinister? So basically, Mister Sinister is allowing Professor X to create an army of mutants for him. I really have this feeling like one day, years from now, Mister Sinister is going to get to that point where it's just like, yeah, listen, the other mutants, they're not trusting me anymore. Time to flip that switch! And just flips that switch, and all of a sudden, like, all the mutants who have been cloned, they just turn white and get like a diamond in the front of their head, and they just turn like Mister Sinister versions of all of them. But then that leads to the question, and this is the next question that I would have, no matter what happens with this, no matter whether or not the Mister Sinister thing ever comes around, this is another huge question that I have. Where are the original copies of these characters? Where are they? Because, correct me if I'm wrong, but some of these characters look younger than they were the last time that we saw them, and wasn't Cyclops like missing an eye the last time that we saw him? I guess Elixir could have fixed that for him, but I don't think that's what happened. I'm honestly wondering, remember, there is that part of Krakoa where on the map it said, nobody really knows what's going on in that part of Krakoa. Are we gonna go in there and we're just going to find like all the original mutants just like fused to the wall like in Aliens? Is that what's going to happen? Are they still around or did they already die? Because remember, we see that scene in here. We see that scene. Professor X going in here and he's waking them up. And it's the exact same pages from the very first House of X. Professor X is going in there and saying, to me, my X-Men. And I was like, oh, okay, that's pretty clever. You're just taking the thing that happened earlier and copying it in here. Wait. Are you copying it in here because those things already, are you copying those things in here because that was a hint of things to come? Because that was you coming in here and just going, yes, here's a preview image of something coming up just to get you guys talking. Or had this already happened? How many times have you killed your children, Charles? How many times have the X-Men already died doing all this stuff that you need them to do to get them to this point? How many times has that happened? Have they already like died several dozen times already? Was this the first time it happened and this was your big test to make sure that it actually worked? Or were there some X-Men who had some problems with what you were doing and you decided they'd be way easier to convince after you had, I don't know, knocked them out and then transferred their brain into a brand new goo body? Is that what happened? Because this comes back around to something that I've been saying since issue 1. The X-Men, they don't really seem evil, but they seem a lot more willing to be evil than they were before. They're willing to let Sabretooth just murder a bunch of people who weren't even bad guys. They were just protecting some files, and Sabretooth just destroyed them. And then they come in here and just go, yeah, you humans can't do anything about us. Let him murder as many of you as he wants. We don't care. We're still gonna spring him out of jail. And there's nothing you can do about that. I had so many people after that issue where Emma Frost came in there as just the biggest boss in the world and just told the humans, you can't even touch us. We've got diplomatic immunity. Sabretooth is ours. He's gonna walk right out of this jail right now. And she just stared everyone down in there. Yeah, I had so many people like, oh man, that's one of the best Emma Frost moments I've ever seen. Oh man, she was such a badass. I was like, yeah, she just got a murderer out of jail. Like, not even like a murderer we liked, like an evil bad person. She got him out of jail just because humans. That's all that this came down to, really. Yeah. The X-Men are okay with the evil mutants being evil now. I have big questions about that. I mean, there's even that moment in which they were trying to get approval from the UN in order for Krakoa to become its own sovereign nation. And there's that moment in which Professor X is telepathically talking to Emma Frost, and he's just like, yeah, I know what you did. I know there's some people out there who weren't going to vote on this who then mysteriously voted on this. I know exactly what you did. And good for you. Go and buy yourself something nice. Yes, okay, very nice. Yeah, questions? I have questions about that. it does definitely seem like the X-Men's moral compass is now just spinning all around. So I do have to wonder if that's what they're willing to do to humans. If that's what they're willing to just say, you know, screw it, we don't care anymore. If that's how dedicated they are to their goal, that's what I should say. If that's how dedicated they are to their goal right now, what makes you think that if a mutant came in there and said, Charles, you can't do this. Charles, you've gone too far. This isn't the dream that you had, Charles. What makes us think that he wouldn't just go, oh, it wasn't the dream that I had? Oh, Charles, this is exactly the dream that you always had. I have a lot of questions about how they got to this point. And I'm wondering if that's going to be one of the big things revealed in the final issue. But here's where their stuff starts getting really creepy. Here's where I get into some of the bigger questions that I have about where they're going with this. When the X-Men come back to life, and they bring them out and put them forward in front of all the other mutants out there, and they're all like, how do we know that they're real? But they're all chanting it as if this has happened several times before, and they've rehearsed this particular chant. And they come in there, and they're basically like giving a sermon. They're basically coming in there, and this is like a religious experience that they are presenting here, which, I mean, there is a resurrection involved, so I guess it is kind of like a religious experience. They are conquering death. Yeah, it was one of those things that I looked at, and I'm sorry. Pete, you got something to say? I want to know what happened to Lockjaw. Yes, me too. We're the Inhumans in all this. Anywho, sorry, she was jumping up on me. I had to pay her some attention. Yeah, they come out there and they're presenting this like it's some big religious experience, and they're all chanting this, and it's being presented in this very positive light. You've got this big shining sun there, just spotlighting all of them. It's this big, magnificent piece of artwork, which, by the way, the art in all these issues has been stunning. Kudos to the artists on this book. This has been an amazing series to not just read, but even just look at. It's been so damn good. So it's presented positively, but I keep looking at this like, yeah, if you didn't have the big sparkling sun there, and these weren't characters who I had grown up loving, and these were like some new characters, and I don't know, the sun was setting, you know, you just cast in a different light, this would look like a cult meeting. This would look exactly like a cult meeting to me. And I don't know if they want us to think that. As I said, it's got the big sparkling sunset there, and oh man, it looks so amazing. They're all just being covered in this bright, shining, hopeful light. But I'm wondering if that's being put in there so that we won't question how weird some of the dialogue sounds in here, how weird this premise is. I'm wondering if that's being put in there to A, turn to all the X-Men fans out there and go, you know how bad the X-Men have had for so long? You ain't got bad anymore. This is the X-Men's payback time, baby. For how bad the X-Men have had, oh man, this is the return you have been waiting on. Oh man, this is exactly the moment that you have been waiting on. Or is it them coming in here and going, oh, you think this is a good thing? Uh-huh. Psych! 10 issues later, time to reveal this was actually a bad thing. But you want to talk about another thing that kind of has my spidey sense tingling? Another thing that made me feel really uncomfortable? Even though it's not really framed like it's supposed to make you feel uncomfortable, when they're talking about the Five, and they're talking about how the Five, they used to have problems working with each other, but now they get along. Now they work great together, like a well-oiled machine. Okay, that's great. Good. Teamwork. Hooray for that. But it keeps going with that description. It keeps going to the point in which they start describing them as inseparable. And how now they don't even like not being around each other. And about how now they're always with other members of the Five. You want to talk about things that if you framed it in any other light and you took the exact dialogue and just put it with other characters and it would sound like a cult? That's kind of a great example of that. And also, I'll say this one is entirely just me. I've been preparing for Thorgy-ween, our entire month-long celebration of everything spooky that we do every single October. So I've been reading some Junji Ito. That sounds like something you would see in a Junji Ito book. That sounds like something where, you know, like 2 years from now, we're gonna return to the Five. We haven't seen them in all this time. And now they're all just fused into one big body. Just a bunch of heads and arms just twisting around there. That's kind of the way that he would phrase something like that in that book before everything goes horribly wrong. So again, maybe it's just me, But the way that they were talking about this, yes, it definitely was meant to convey a positive note. But it was so positive, I was like, okay, nobody's that positive. This is weird. This is weird to the point of like brainwashing almost. Why is Professor X still not taking that helmet off? So those were all the things that had me questioning the whole resurrection thing. But now we get into the big final reveal, which is that, yes, Krakoa has now successfully become its own nation, and Professor X is opening that to all the mutants across the world. It is a place for all mutants, no matter what. As long as you come here and you remain cool on Krakoa, you can do whatever you want. That's it. Everybody's welcome. So we see all the villains coming. All of them. I saw Azazel popping up in there. I was like, don't you live in, like, hell? Don't you, like, live in another, like, brimstone dimension that's entirely your own? Why would you even leave there to come to Krakoa? Why are you doing, what? Yeah, I had some questions about that. But all of them are there, including Apocalypse. Apocalypse was the big character that came in there at the end. And I love they set something up in Power of X in which they said, oh shoot, Krakoa has been around much longer than we remember. He was one of the first mutants. And back then, Apocalypse was a hero. Apocalypse was the good guy back then. Apocalypse came in here and he was the one fighting for mutants back before people even knew what a mutant was. And he and Krakoa, they go way back. So when Apocalypse pops up here, Krakoa's just like, my old friend, yes, hey, let me create all these birds to fly around you. You know, like a John Woo film. Which has me also wondering, okay, you know that an alliance between Apocalypse and Professor X can't last. You know that's not going to last forever. Do you think Krakoa is going to be on Professor X's side when that stuff goes down? Or is this basically just Apocalypse's future kingdom that Professor X is making for him? Yeah, but we're not there yet. Basically, Apocalypse comes in here, and one theory that I had early on was, why is Apocalypse now on the side of the good guys? Could it be that Apocalypse is looking at everything that Professor X is doing with the House of X, and he just goes, listen, you're doing exactly what I always did. Just I always used war to get what I want. I always used destruction to make it happen. But I did all that to fight for survival of the fittest. That's exactly what you've done, man. You just did it without having to kill everybody. So of course I'm on your side. That is almost exactly what Apocalypse says at the end of this. So, hooray! The 2 of the 900 theories I had turned out to be right on this. Yes, so that is how this thing ends, with all the mutants completely united. And again, it's another one of those scenes where I look at it and it's like, this should be positive. This should be one of those things I look at and go, oh my goodness, all the mutants united to fight for a common cause. But instead I'm looking at this like, X-Men are now on the side of Apocalypse. You know that ain't gonna last. Where's this going? Because, yeah, Jonathan Hickman, he has storylines planned. And they can take years. He does not worry about getting a storyline out there quick. He takes his time to plant every seed that he needs. And that was a big seed that he just planted. Who knows when it's going to sprout. So yeah, I'm very, very excited for this. But again, it's just such an odd issue because it's one of those issues where every single page you look at it's like, oh, I should be feeling so positive about this. But there's that voice in the back of my head like, no, you know none of this is good, right? Now I've only got a few issues left and there's a few questions left remaining. First big question is, what the heck is happening to Moira McTaggart? We know that she faked her death in this timeline. What happened to her in that? Where is she right now? Is she in that weird black spot? She has not reappeared. We're waiting on that moment for her to come back. So I am wondering what is going to happen with that. And I'm almost wondering, you know, I made that comment about how, what if all the X-Men, they're just in some weird cocoon thing, making sure that Professor X can keep the original copies in their original casing, you know, make sure that nobody opens them. Is that what he's doing with them? But with Moira McTaggart, considering that if she dies, all this gets rewritten, I wouldn't be shocked if he's got her in like the deepest of cryogenic sleeps, just completely out of it. But the other question is, what is that mystery timeline? What is the missing timeline? And I'm thinking it has to relate to that timeline that went thousands and thousands of years into the future, in which we see that blue lady, that blue robot lady, reaching out to the Phalanx. And I keep asking myself, how is a timeline like that still going? How is a timeline like that going so far into the future? Because would it have been reset when Moira dies? So my last final theory that I'm going to put out there, and remember, I've got like a 2% track record on this, so take it with the grainiest of salts. I think that blue lady is Moira. I think that might be from a timeline in which Moira McTaggart went, you know what, if you can't fight the robots, join the robots. Screw it. That's just what I'm going to do. I'm afraid of dying because every time that I die, I just come back and get resurrected at this exact same spot. I have to live through my entire childhood. I have to live through the womb all over again. I have to do that again every single freaking time. I don't want to do that again. I can imagine her going to the robots in that timeline and going, just make me immortal. Just make it so I can't die, so I don't have to relive all that over again. So maybe that blue lady we've seen thousands and thousands of years in the future, maybe that's Moira. Maybe that is her. Just now living for thousands of years on the side of the robots. Who knows? Because I don't think it's the future of this reality that we're in. It'd be weird to give us the future of this reality. And there's only one timeline that we don't know anything about. So it's gotta have something to do with that, right? I don't know. Again, those are just my theories. Let me know yours in the comments down below. And if you like this video, make sure that you share it around the web. We do comic book videos every single week. And as I said, in just a couple of weeks, we are going to start delving into the spooky, scary books. However, House of X wraps up in October, so we are still going to do a special episode talking all about that. Don't worry, guys. We'll be back for that one. So if you want to see that, make sure that you click that subscribe button, ring that bell, so that way you know when these videos go up. And you can always follow me around the web on Twitter and Twitch at Professor Thorgy. Thanks for tuning in, everyone. Come in next time. Bye.